If you're Catholic, why would you vote for a Democrat? What they're doing to Catholics, I don't know what's going on with the Catholics, but they're really being persecuted. Why would you vote for Biden, and why would you vote for a Democrat? A new report from the House Judiciary Committee proves that the Biden FBI actually targeted Catholics as potential domestic terrorists. Do you believe this? And, you know, evangelicals will not be far behind.
So that didn't actually happen. Donald Trump basically accusing the Biden administration last month of targeting Catholics for religious persecution and warning that evangelicals will be next. Joining us now at the table, national correspondent covering religion, faith and values for the New York Times, Ruth Graham. Ruth is the co-author of the new piece titled "Trump is Connecting with a Different Type of Evangelical Voter." And here's what you wrote, Ruth. No Republican, I think we can get it up, no Republican has had a closer or more counterintuitive relationship with evangelicals than Mr. Trump. The twice-divorced casino magnate made little pretense of being particularly religious before his presidency. The ardent support he received from evangelical voters both in 2016 and 2020 is often described as a largely transactional one, an investment in his appointment of Supreme Court justices who would abolish the federal right to abortion and advance the group's other top priorities. But religion scholars, drawing on a growing body of data, suggest another explanation. Evangelicals are not exactly who they used to be. Being evangelical once suggested regular church attendance, a focus on salvation and conversion, and strongly held views on specific issues such as abortion. Today, though, it is often used to describe a cultural and political identity, one in which Christians are considered persecuted minority, traditional institutions are viewed skeptically, and Mr. Trump looms large. It's not your evangelical movement, Joe.
No, it's really not, Ruth. I grew up in the Baptist church. This piece I thought was remarkable because there's so many of us who had that background, who went to church 3 times a week, who, you know, knew it was the Gospels. You learned the Gospels, you followed the Gospels. If you sinned, you know, at the center point of it was you asked for forgiveness. You were humble and you forgave others. Donald Trump's a guy who, when asked in 2016, have you ever asked God for forgiveness? He goes, no, I have no need to. Asked his favorite book of the Bible. He goes, I like all of them. Asked if he was more of a New Testament or Old Testament guy. He goes, I like them both. And so I've been asking for quite some time, how have all my friends moved in this direction? Well, a lot of people have just picked up, as you said, the name evangelical as a cultural marker. They don't know about the Bible. I've talked to a lot of them. They're just completely ignorant about the Bible. They don't go to church. This name, evangelical, now, it's just a cultural marker.
Is really in flux. I mean, that was the origin of this story, was realizing, you know, we've been talking and thinking about the evangelical vote for decades now, right? It's a core part of the Republican base, and we think we know what that means, that it correlates with regular church attendance, you know, these certain set of theological and spiritual ideas that you alluded to. But in fact, you know, there's some really big changes happening sort of around the borders of that definition of the word evangelical, and Trump is an important figure in that. So there's really been a dramatic decline of church going. That's been a slide that's happening over decades, but it's really accelerated in recent years among Republicans in particular. So now there's a Republican Party where less than half of Republican voters say they've attended church in the last month, or at least once a month. So that's a big shift. And then you have Trump in the center of this, who, you know, we know he doesn't attend church regularly. He doesn't sort of speak the language fluently. But he has held evangelicals and Christians more broadly up as this persecuted group, and that he's standing in the breach defending them. So, you know, when I talk to self-identified evangelical voters, which is how pollsters capture all of this, is that self-identification. Again, a lot of them now don't go to church, also don't speak that language particularly fluently, but carry that as a marker of self-identification. And a lot of them see Trump for what he is. And, you know, they might say, well, he prays, or he sometimes go to church, or he's a man of faith. But the most important thing is the way that they see him kind of as a defender of their values and their priorities and their identity.
Yeah. which again is a cultural identity, not a religious identity, is a political identity, not a religious identity. You can go on and on that. It is interesting that in 16, I think there were some polls that showed that evangelical voters who went to church more were less likely to vote for Donald Trump. But those that just, again, are using the name as a cultural or political identity is interesting. I want to go back to something we talked about yesterday, and it's just so remarkable, Ruth. Abortion. When I was in high school, Southern Baptist Convention was pro-choice. And they had one resolution after another resolution saying they were pro-choice. And it's so interesting. In 1979, Richard Viguerie and Paul Weyrich and Jerry Falwell decided that they were going to do anything they could to beat the Southern Baptist Democrat that was in the White House. So they turned abortion not only into a political issue, but a religious issue. Why am I bringing this up? I think this really was the beginning of it, where they literally found an issue. They dragged it into the church, and they said, this is now going to be the centerpiece of what defines Christianity. And I've seen it through the years. It's kind of bizarre, being in a high school, knowing your church was pro-choice, and the Southern Baptist Convention was pro-choice. And now, when I said this on TV a couple months ago, I had a friend call me up going, Joe, that's the gravest of sins. And why are you saying that? I was like, dude, read the Bible. It's not there. And yet, they've redefined what it means to be a Christian.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big, now that has been a centerpiece of evangelical politics for, 40 plus years now. That was a shift that happened in the sort of post-Roe moment. Catholics had been leading the pro-life movement before that. But yes, I mean, politics have been deeply interwoven with, sort of the evangelical church experience and evangelicalism in America for a long time now. So that makes it all the more interesting and vital to sort of see, like, well, how is this shifting now in the Trump era?
Ruth, just to could build off of that a little bit. I mean, the thing with Trump is, like, everything's Teflon. Nothing seems to impact him, including, it seems, with the evangelical community. And on abortion, I mean, he has kind of bragged, of course, about confirming these 3 Supreme Court justices on one side. And then on the other, he seems to take kind of a point of view that's far more leaning toward a moderate view on abortion than a number of other candidates in the field. So I guess my question is, does any of this impact him at all, or they just don't really care?
Well, so one important piece of this idea of the sort of shifting evangelical vote is that a lot of these cultural Christians don't place abortion at the top of their list. So when my colleague Charlie and I were talking to voters in Iowa that sort of fit this description, they were saying, sure, yes, I'm evangelical, I vote on biblical issues, but then when you drill down, they're talking about building the wall. They're talking about, border security, immigration more broadly. They're talking about the economy. And they really weren't bringing up abortion as the top priority for them. So I think that these changes are going to have implications for the party and sort of what policies, and I think Trump also has an instinct for that. So he has said that, abortion is, sort of a loser of an issue in a way, right? So he has like a real feel for the direction this is flowing in, and it's become a really complicated reason for Republicans for that reason.
Yeah, not easy for those evangelicals who aren't Trump supporters. National correspondent covering religion, faith and values for the New York Times, Ruth Graham, thank you so much for joining such an interesting conversation.
Feel any better? I have already put evac on alert. He's ready to go if it comes to that. General, I can assure you.
General, let me into the war room to see you, so I had to hack my way onto this frequency.
This better be critical, Willie.
Sir, come on, what is it not, please? Okay, couple of things. I'm running low on the dough. I was thinking about taking a couple of months sick leave, maybe starting today. And oh yeah, I intercepted a transmission from Megatron.
Then send it through.
Yes, sir, right away, sir. And so I was so dang weird going on the other stuff.
This is your last warning, insects. Relinquish what remains of the Allspark.
So he's insect you?
Megatron.
What?
The Autobots cannot protect you. They were defeated on our world, and we will defeat them here.
This was just a diversion. Security, please bring up. Ravage, he's already inside. Deeds! Give me an update on that reserve. Boss readiness. What was his name? What was it?
Evac, sir.
Right, evac.
She's right in front.
We are facing a heavy sustained attack. They appear to be after the All-Spark. General! General! Need this evac immediately. Evac everything. Hold on. National security evacuation. Stand down. Check it out. The failed the mission celebrations. The amateurs on a suicide mission.